Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the security seminar here at Purdue University. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Stas Jarocki. Professor Jarocki is assistant professor in computer science in University of California at Irvine. He received a PhD in computer science from MIT in 2001, and his research interests include cryptography and fault-tolerant distributed protocols. Today, Stas will talk about secret handshakes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. So this is the plan for the talk. I will explain what secret handshakes are. I will go over results from last year, which is a joint work with Claude Castelluccia and Jean Tsudik, where we construct secret handshakes and affiliation hiding encryption from computational Diffie-Hellman. And in the second part, about talk a new work with a student, Xiaomin Liu, on unlinkable secret handshakes. Okay, and mention some possible extensions, open problems. Okay, so we start from the picture of regular public key authentication. So in a public key infrastructure, you have a verifier and a prover who wants to prove that she's certified by some certificate agent, in this case, let's say CIA. Okay, so how does it work in a public key infrastructure? That means if she's certified by CIA, that means that she has a certificate, hers, which is Alice's certificate, that is signed by, which is a signed statement signed by CIA's public key on a pairing between Alice and some other identifiers and her public key. Okay, so first of all, she delivers that, and then she proves possession of a secret key that corresponds to this public key. Okay. So that's just how regular public key authentication is done, and what we notice, okay, so you might like it, we might not like it, is that this protocol has no affiliation privacy. Okay, so her affiliation, which is CIA, so apparently, she holds the certificate, she's a member of CIA group, is revealed in this protocol. Of course, it's revealed because it should be, right? Like Bob wants to certify, wants to check precisely that. Is she certified by CIA? So, so in some sense, it's like, well, it's revealed because it should be. But let's pose the following problem. So can Alice control to whom she's going to reveal this affiliation? Or in other words, can Alice authenticate herself and reveal this affiliation only if the verifier, which is the Bob, passes some criteria as well? So in other words, if Bob in place, for example, to simplify it, if Bob is also a CIA member, okay, if Bob also has a public key B and a signed statement by the CIA on a pairing Bob, etc., and his key, okay. But that sounds, so at first, it doesn't sound like a trivial problem because it sounds like a chicken and egg type of problem. So, who is going to go first? If Alice will reveal her certificate only if Bob possesses his, then, so it's the Bob who should send his certificate first, and in which case his affiliation is not protected, okay? So how do we do that? So let's so here is the statement of the problem. We have and in general we have an asymmetric situation. Okay, so Alice is certified by some agency A, while Bob is certified by agency B. What that means? That means that Alice in general has some ticket issued by this certification. In the picture before, this ticket was a pair of a secret key and a signed statement on the pairing between Alice and the public key. But in general, it can be anything, okay, that cryptographically works. let's call that a ticket. And moreover, Alice has a policy which states she's willing to talk to people who are certified by CAB, in particular Bob. And symmetrically, Bob has a policy which says that he doesn't mind talking to people certified by CAA. Okay. So far this is a regular authentication by bidirectional authentication picture, except we want certain privacy properties of it. Okay. And the privacy properties are of two kinds. And then symmetrically for Bob, the same type. Okay. But for each of them, there's really two. So from Alice's point of view, Alice wants, first of all, to reveal the fact that she has a ticket issued by CAA. In other words, she's affiliated with CAA. She wants to reveal that only to people who are themselves affiliated with the agency that her policy states. Okay? So only if Bob passes the test, if he has a proper ticket, he should learn that she's affiliated with CAA to begin with. Moreover, there is one more property, okay? So that would protect the fact that she is affiliated with CAA. But another part of her, of what she might want to protect, is that she's the kind of person who's willing to talk to people certified by CAB, okay? That's also something you might not want to reveal. Trivially, in the symmetric case, where basically both of these guys are CAA guys, in this case, both CAA and CAB will just be CIA, right? So the fact that I want to talk to CIA people basically means I am a CIA guy myself, right? So it's really both of these things that should be protected. Okay, which is the second property. And of course, Bob wants the same type of protection, okay, against malicious Alice. Okay, so now that you stated like this, in particular, this is it's a two-party computation problem. Alice has some inputs, her ticket and her policy, and her ticket affiliation and policy. Bob has inputs, and if Bob has some inputs, and the output of this two-party computation problem should be basically just yes or no, only if they match on the diagonals, right? So if my policy matches with your ticket and my ticket matches with your policy. If the protocol output just says yes and no, it basically protects all the secrecy of the inputs, right? So we know by the general results in secure party computation, two-party computation, that there exists a protocol that solves this, okay? But these general results that tell you that the protocol exists and it's efficient too, the efficiency here is measured in polynomial time, and in particular, these basically they do not yield practical protocols. So the protocol that will result from general techniques would be linear in the size of the circuit description of this problem. Okay, so if you think about circuit description of signature verification, you have like thousands of gates already. Okay, and so this kind of compilation, generic compilation, is going to create protocols which might have, on the order of thousands or tens of thousands cryptographic operations. Okay, so we want something faster, something which has a cost of regular authentication. So we could say, well, you can authenticate in a regular way, or for not much higher price, you can run all your authentication protocols at this affiliation hiding anonymous in this anonymous mode. Okay. This is actually what I just said. we will relax the problem at first, okay? And this is a paper from last year, where we will allow the resulting protocol to be linkable. Namely, each party will have a random string, like Alice will have a string A, Bob string B, and these are random pseudonyms, okay? So they cannot be, they don't look like CIA pseudonyms or FBI pseudonyms or Purdue University pseudonyms. They are random numbers. On the other hand, everybody just has one number, and therefore it's linkable because occurrence of the same person, even though nobody learns what institution they're affiliated with and what policy they have, nevertheless, two occurrences of the same person are detected. Okay, which, you know, is not fully satisfactory for somebody who wants perfect anonymity. Okay. Because you can derive some properties from the fact that you see the same person in two different places, and you're like, aha, he looks like an FBI guy. Okay. So we allow at the beginning for the two parties to exchange these pseudonymous random numbers. Okay, and then the secret handshake protocol proceeds on the following input. So policy is just a public key, like a public key of the certification authority. Okay, and the ticket is essentially a signature of the authority on this pseudonym. You can ask, why did I make it so particular? You know, why do I ask for these things to be signatures? Later on in the talk, you will see that this notion, however you define it, actually implies signatures. So you can just as well call these tickets signatures because they must satisfy security properties of a signature scheme if they want to be secret handshakes, okay? So we can just as well call them signatures to start with. Another thing that you know, so these are signatures, but also we can call them trapdoors for a given ID. So here, ID, I will call these pseudonymous random strings, I will call them IDs, and the signatures I will call trapdoors. Also, I will allow, so once I have a system like this, I have a revocation in an easy way. I can support revocation easily by just, if some IDs are revoked by a given CA, the list of these IDs is published, okay? So, and now it's up to the encryptor or up to the party who wants to authenticate people, you know, whether or not somebody is still affiliated with CA2 to check this revocation list. So therefore, we assume that that CA2 includes the revocation list. Okay. So it's okay. So how do you revoke? So how do you do this? So since identities are exchanged, I just check whether A is not on the revocation list, and that's it. And from that point, I can forget about this revocation list. Okay. So the problem was actually posed not by us. At first, this type of secrecy in the authentication was considered by Martin Abadi, but it was done for symmetric key authentication, not for public key. And for symmetric keys, it's significantly simpler. And then the notion of secret handshakes was introduced, at Oakland by Balfans et al., a bunch of researchers from Xerox PARC. And it was solved by using bilinear Diffie-Hellman, okay, which means using bilinear maps. Essentially, as you will see in a second, identity-based encryption done via bilinear maps implies this notion in a very simple way. That's what these guys did. What we do is we notice that you don't need identity-based encryption what you need is an affiliation hiding, a more general concept encryption. And in particular, we do this affiliation hiding encryption from computational Diffie-Hellman without bilinear maps, which has two consequences. It's a weaker assumption, it's a more standard assumption, and it uses any discrete log, so it uses regular modular fields, not elliptic curves, so it is much faster. Okay. So actually, our protocol is quite simple, and this is it. So what you the secret handshake proceeds as follows. It could be reversed, but we chose this to present it this way. It doesn't matter which way it's drawn. Alice encrypts her proof of possession of her ticket. Okay. She encrypts it under a key that is derived from Bob's pseudonym and the certification agency that is in Alice's policy. Okay. Now, this scheme, first of all, like the way it should work is that the only way that you can decrypt this encrypted statement is so the way this public key is formed, in other words, is that the corresponding decryption key that corresponds to this encryption key is a signature on string B issued by certification authority CA2. Okay. In other words, we need an encryption scheme for which signatures are decryption keys. Okay. So if you think of a trapdoor as a signature by the authority on the pseudonym, then I need a signature scheme such that if I see the message that was signed, and I know, or I assume, or guess, the public key that signed that message, from these two elements, I can form an encryption key for which the signature is the corresponding decryption key. Okay, and for bilinear maps, that thing can be non-interactive. For El Gamal and things that we built it on, computational Diffie-Hellman, we will only get an interactive encryption to achieve this. Now, of course, interaction is worse than a lack of interaction, but this interaction is only two rounds, so it's only boom, boom. And because there is an exchange of identifiers, the first round of this interaction can be piggybacked on the exchange, and therefore our round complexity doesn't grow. So we have the same number of rounds as they do. Even though the tool we use is an interactive encryption scheme. Okay, so now what do we need of this encryption for this protocol to be a secret handshake? In other words, for this protocol to hide the affiliation, as I said before, these two secrecy properties I wanted. Okay, so simply speaking, the encryption must hide this certification that either party assumes. Okay, so the certification authority that signed either party's ticket. So it's that signed Bob's ticket and that Alice is assuming as she as she forms this encryption message. Okay. In other words, we need an encryption scheme such that when I form a public key from a certification authority that is in my policy, nobody should see that. So nobody should, seeing this ciphertext, okay, because this is going to be a ciphertext, right? Nobody should be able to link that ciphertext to the certification authority that Alice was using in forming it. And similarly, you see, the way, because it's an interaction, Bob is going to perform this interaction on his input of a ticket that was signed by CA2. Again, nobody seeing this interaction should tell what is the authority that signed Bob's ticket. And this is the secrecy property, but of course we need, we need this to be a strong encryption, right? Because in particular, Alice encrypts her proof of possession of a certificate. So if there was another way of decrypting this but the position of the signature, then then the information that she's associated with CA1 would leak. This is a funny notion of encryption that is secure against chosen message attacks, okay? And from which you basically, so it sounds like signature security really, and not surprisingly because it's an encryption derived from signatures. I will actually explain this notion right away. Okay, no, but first I will do the explanation of how do we state and prove affiliation hiding of this encryption. So what is affiliation hiding? First, we have two types. So we have an affiliation hiding for the sender. Alice starts from input of CA2, and she forms this encryption. The verifier, the receiver, might be a malicious person whose aim is just to tell, is Alice affiliated? Is Alice the type of person who accepts conversations with people who are affiliated with CA2? And if the conversation that Alice presents to the verifier is indistinguishable from the conversation that can be produced on just public parameters. So for those of you who are acquainted with the cryptographic terminology, this machine on the right is called simulator. So the simulator, just knowing the public parameters, not knowing anything about the certification agency that is in Alice's policy, if the view of the protocol that the simulator can produce is in fact indistinguishable from the true Alice, so even a malicious receiver cannot tell the difference between the two, then clearly for cryptographers, this conversation must not leak, must be leaking nothing about this Alice's input, okay? Because you can do the same conversation without knowing the input. And a similar notion for the receiver. So now the Alice can be malicious, and however Bob participates in this protocol, he starts on an input, the ticket from CA2, okay? And again, and here, if we think of it as an encryption, his participation is very passive. So what are we talking about? Well, this is an interactive encryption, or it could be, and it is in our case. So his participation in it will indeed be based on his inputs, and therefore the problem stands. And we define the notion in the same way. If a simulator, not knowing any tickets, and in particular not knowing that Bob, what certification authority is issuing these, can produce a view that looks the same, that's our notion of affiliation hiding for the receiver. Okay, and well, and a chosen message attack on a signature scheme. Well, so recall what is a chosen message attack on a signature. Okay, sorry. I will flash the notion of chosen message attack security of this encryption I'm building. So here is the chosen message attack security of a signature. Adversary gets any message that he wants signed, okay, and he does it repeatedly. So he sees signatures on any message that he wants, and he wins the game if he can issue some unsigned message and a signature on it that is forged because it's not any of these. Okay, so we say signature is chosen message attack secure if such game cannot succeed. Okay, if no adversary can succeed in this game. Similarly, for this encryption scheme, adversary, in this case the malicious receiver, he perhaps he gets a lot of trapdoors for many pseudonyms. Okay, and so he gets many trapdoors for many pseudonyms. But let's say that these are all pseudonyms of bad people who are revoked. Okay, so now in order to pass through the protocol, he has to issue a different pseudonym, not on the list of the revoked group members. And now he has to pass in the following game. Alice picks some message, she sends it over encrypted under the CA and this new pseudonym, and Bob's or malicious verifier wins if he can decrypt it. So it's very similar to security signatures. In signatures, he won if he could output a new signature on unsigned message, and now he wins if he can, on unsigned pseudonym, he can decrypt on the key that corresponds to the unsigned pseudonym. So so let me just point out that this is exactly what identity-based encryption is precisely this. Okay, so it passes this notion, because if you think of these trapdoors as private keys, these BIs as identities, and the trapdoors as private keys on those identities, this is exactly what the security of identity-based encryption says. If you present some identity that is not yours, so you don't have a trapdoor on it, you should not be able to decrypt. Okay. Also, standard PKI can be taught in this as an example of this setting, but we skip that. Okay, so let me just go quickly. This will be 3 or so minutes of more technical thing. The construction of this anonymous encryption from discrete log signatures. So discrete log signatures, the secret key is of the authority that signs these trapdoors is X. Public key is G to the X. And a signature on some message in our application pseudonym is a pair SR, which satisfies this equation. Okay, where H is a hash function. So the adversary gets a lot of these gets signatures on some pseudonyms. Now all those pseudonyms are revoked, and so he so this is the interactive encryption. Excuse me. He sends. Excuse me. Actually, you know what? Why don't you look here first? So the interactive encryption that will be based on this signature is I will send over the receiver B will send over to A first his identity and the R part of the signature. And now look at this verification equation. The G to the S part can be recomputed from R and B and from the public key of the certification authority. And let's call the G to the S key, K. And now there are encryption schemes that for which for which encryption key has the form G to the S, where S is the decryptor key. This is El-Gamal encryption. Okay, it is based exactly on this math. So therefore, once we compute the public key using the R part of the signature and the signed message, we can encrypt under the key derived from this, and How does the encryption work? Okay, this is El-Gamal encryption. If K is my public key, I encrypt by taking the base G of known base of the group to a random number and taking the key to the random number, hashing the key, and XORing with message. Anyway, this is maybe slightly technical. The idea is that I will try to convince you in 3 sentences that being able to decrypt such encryptions is equivalent to breaking a hard problem. Okay, so being able to decrypt, so while for Schnorr signatures, outputting the whole signature on unsigned message, there is a known proof that reduces that to breaking discrete log. Similarly here, we know that our scheme is secure because we are able to reduce the ability to decrypt. Ouch. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. So we know that our scheme is secure because we are able to show that ability to decrypt on an unsigned identity using any R chosen by this malicious receiver. Such ability also reduces to computing some problems that is believed to be hard, namely computational Diffie-Hellman. So this is how we do it. If you look at this encryption scheme, these two values, they are distributed just like, so k to the u is equal g to the u to the s, because k is equal g to the s. So therefore, these two values look like this, some random value z, and m XORed with z to the s, okay, a hash of z to the s. Therefore, if hash function is random, the only way to output m is to query the hash function on z to the s. Okay, so decrypting is equivalent to, on some random z, actually computing z to the s, so that to be able to query the hash function. Okay, so we know that a successful decryptor must compute z to the s for a random z. Okay, and now in a similar technique, just like proof of a Schnorr signature shows that from 2 successful executions, you can, so if I see 2 challenges, C and C2, which are the result of this hash function, and 2 parts of the signature, I can recompute the discrete log. That's why passing the Schnorr, so forging the Schnorr signature is equivalent to computing the discrete log. Similarly, this thing, if I pass it in 2 different instances of the execution, I can recompute from it the z to the x value, where x is the discrete log under the certification authority's key. Okay, and this is exactly the Diffie-Hellman problem. So seeing g, y, and random z, I'm able to compute z to the x, where y is z to the x. Okay, so okay, this goes a little quick. So basically, this is for just a sketch for if this was not clear, I apologize, but it's hard to sketch these security arguments and have them fully detailed at the same time. Okay, so that's it for the secret handshakes that are linkable. Yeah, and the protocol involves well, there's basically 2 exponentiations for the sender and 1 exponentiation for the receiver. There is 1 more exponentiation to verify the possession of the proof of possession that is inside of the decrypted message. So basically, we have two exponentiations on both sides, and 2 rounds really, because yeah, and well, it's really 3 rounds if because Alice has to somehow be informed that Bob passed it. So the only really way to do it is Alice also embeds a nonce in all this encryption, and Bob sends back the nonce. So it's 3 rounds. But 3 rounds is minimal for explicit authentication anyway. So this looks like a pretty minimal protocol, even though it has this extremely paranoid privacy properties. Okay, but this is an even more paranoid one, okay, where you also want to avoid the linkability. So I hide my policy, I hide all my tickets from anybody but the person that matches me. And moreover, I'm unlinkable. Okay, so no 2 occurrences of me can be put together. So okay, so where was the linkability of this protocol? Well, simply that these pseudonyms are exchanged, okay, and that the trapdoors, and that is just an artifact because we treat the trapdoors as the signatures on the pseudonyms. So it's chicken and egg, whatever. The 2 things together. If I wanted to increase this number of pseudonyms, so for example, give Alice 1,000 one-time pseudonyms, I could do that. Give her 1,000 random numbers, but for each of them, I would need to give her a signature. That's a cost. Moreover, like in practice, I don't believe something like this could really work. So when Alice is lost, okay, and I need to revoke her, suddenly the revocation list, normal revocation list should be proportional to the number of people in your organization, right? I mean, much less so, right? Because you don't revoke most of the people in your organization usually, right? So revocation list should be small. Suddenly now I need to revoke all these one-time things that I give all these one-time pseudonyms. Also, in practice, I think that somebody could attack you, like just keep engaging you in a conversation, pretending to be your friend, right? So you will just use up all these one-time certificates because you don't know whether this is still an attack or this is actually a person that, in the middle of the attack actually does want to talk to you, right? So you will exhaust these one-time certificates in this way if you try to, if you really try to use them one time each. Okay, so we want to avoid somehow these pseudonyms. Okay, and actually the solution is quite simple too. So what we do is we replace the encryption, affiliation hiding, signature-based encryption with affiliation hiding, signature-based broadcast encryption. Okay, so actually I said it wrong. We don't need signatures anymore. So we're just going to use broadcast encryption language. So the protocol goes like this: if the trapdoor is the private key in the broadcast encryption scheme, for which the public key is the authority of Alice, and private keys in the broadcast encryption schemes, they are tagged by some sort of identity, okay, like first, second, third, and fourth, okay, simply speaking. The identity is necessary because the certification, the authority that issues these private keys has to know, has to somehow associate them with identity so that to be able to revoke them. Okay, but nobody else needs to know these identities. So it's only the organization itself knows it. They are not visible to the outside. So I should mention, I don't have a slide for it, what broadcast encryptions really are. So So a normal encryption is that you have a public key and corresponding to it a single and a unique private key, okay? And if I encrypt something, I encrypt under the public key. The only person who can decrypt it is the possessor of the unique decryption private key. Broadcast encryption have, differ from that as follows. There is still one public key. So when I encrypt under a single public key string, but to which there actually might correspond multiple private keys that are, and not everybody can come up with them. The only person who can come up with them is the owner of some sort of super key that corresponds to this encryption key. Okay, so there is a super master key from which all the different private keys can be derived. So if I'm an owner of the group, I can issue each of you a decryption key so that when a message is encrypted under our group public key, each of you can decrypt it. Okay. So why don't I just simply use a normal public key encryption and just give you the same decryption key? Right, so I just replicate the same decryption key, give all of you the key. The reason is that I won't be able to revoke any of you. Okay, so using standard encryption, the trivial solution, right, is not a good system, because once I gave all of you the same decryption key, how am I able to kick any of you out, right? Sorry for the language, right? So broadcast encryptions you can differentiate. So everybody has a different private key, and moreover, there is something called a key update message, okay, which I can broadcast to the whole world, put it up on my website, and the key update has the following property: everybody who is not revoked can update their current private key, okay, so that they can still decrypt messages. And moreover, the public key of our group is also updated by this key update message, okay? Therefore, everybody who from now on encrypts for the group uses the key modified by the update. So the one person who was revoked cannot read it. Everybody else, because they were able to update their private keys, can read it. And so forth it goes. And it should be constant state. So I don't need to remember all these update messages. It's an active thing. I consume the update message, change the public key. If I'm an encryptor, I consume the update message by changing my private key if I'm one of the still non-revoked group members. So I will use this terminology because of key update messages, the private keys, and the public keys. So now, having the broadcast encryption scheme, I proceed as follows. Alice encrypts some nonce that she chooses under the public key of the CA2 group. Bob encrypts a nonce of his choice under the CA1 key of the other group. Now, if Alice is a member of CA1, she should have the valid, still unrevoked private key. So she should decrypt this NA, let's call this decryption NA prime. And if Bob still has the unrevoked private key for the CA2 group, he will be able to decrypt this nonce. Sorry, I said it wrong. Her nonce that she decrypts is called NB prime. He will be able to decrypt this nonce, call it NA prime, and from after that, there is standard key agreement. So this stands for authenticated key agreement. So they can authenticate each other by just checking, do we have the same nonces, okay? And this is standard how authenticated key agreements work. And this also does not reveal anything. So if you don't have if you guys don't have the same nonces after this point, you will not learn. Maybe you have some other nonce. I don't know. I will not learn anything. And this is the standard key agreement protocol that does this. So the only thing we really need to worry about is this part. So I said that the CA really includes all the revocation information, all these key update messages, and also the private keys will include the revocation information because I'm assuming the users update them. And the broadcast encryption needs to be affiliation hiding, meaning, again, the broadcast encryption should hide the what key was used, that Alice used. And that's it, really, because, well, unless it's an interactive broadcast encryption, but actually it's not. Okay, so we have a non-interactive broadcast encryption. So basically, that's really the only thing we need to protect. And the unlinkability follows, okay, because if this broadcast encryption hides the public key that is used, then that's it. There is nothing else that can be linked in here, because every time I use a different nonce, and therefore I have an unlinkable scheme. I don't have that much time to go through the construction. I will only mention maybe that how does it sort of roughly work? Essentially, I will be sorry, I was going a little slow. The way I will encrypt, well, why don't I just show this full solution, okay? So this is the solution that does work, okay? Okay. The broadcast encryptions that I use, okay, will be sensitive to I call delta, okay, the maximal. I should have actually said this earlier. So the protocol becomes trivial if you assume that everybody is fully updated all the time. So if, because that's how broadcast encryption schemes work, that if we all consume all the key updates that are issued, so we all updated our decryption keys, that really means that we all have the same decryption key, okay? So there is some sort of master decryption key that we all share. And therefore, the encryption, broadcast encryption is just a very simple thing. I take the master encryption key, encrypt something for you. You have the same key because you're still not revoked, and you are perfectly updated. So you have the current master decryption key. You decrypt it, okay? So the protocol is basically like shared key authentication. We share the same key, and so we can privately authenticate each other because we use symmetric encryption, which does not reveal what key is used. But this is not a very practical system, okay? Because in any kind of group management, it's impractical to assume that everybody keeps updating themselves in a perfectly synchronous way, okay? What is practical, on the other hand, is that there is some maximum lag that is allowed, okay? So if you have not updated yourself for some time, okay, then too bad. You won't be able to engage in the secret handshake protocol with the members of your group. And we call that, so there is some delta lag in our solution. And what we do, we translate all these key update messages so that essentially you can encrypt your challenge under all the information that is embedded in the key update messages. So it has the property that if you were not revoked in one of these key updated messages, you will be able to decrypt all that stuff. And if you were revoked in any of these key update messages, you won't be able to proceed. Moreover, also, this is a little tricky to do it efficiently, that if you were revoked now, but not before, so there's a delta lag, you will be able to proceed at the beginning, and then you will stop, and you will not notice what happened, okay? And this is essential, because if you were freshly revoked, we don't want you to be able to tell that I am still in this group, okay? So I'll be sending messages that have a delta lag, so you will recognize, you have these key update messages from this delta lag, and therefore you'll be able to consume them because you weren't revoked at that time. And it's a little tricky to do this so that, you know, so that basically computation can proceed in this oblivious way to what's going on, and it's efficient at the same time. Okay, so it's efficient for the good guys and yet oblivious for the bad guys who were revoked just now and yet cannot make sense of it, that, oh, this is still my group, you know, the group that I used to belong to. Okay, so we achieve this. However, we have definitely not optimal size of this whole thing. So our size is proportional to delta times log n. Log n is the number of your members of the group. Okay, so you know, this is, you know, it's okay for small groups and okay for some small deltas, but you know, this can be definitely improved. And that's one of the open problems. And you know, so I should stop here, and maybe there's still some time for questions. Maybe.
Is there any question?
Maybe just simple clarification. I'm not sure what I'm missing, but when you talk about the first approach, you said that you don't use elliptic curves in just like conventional cryptography and its standard assumptions, and it's more efficient. But my understanding was that elliptic curves provide the same security at using a group of smaller size as the conventional cryptography. So I'm not sure what.
Yes. So that is true in the sense that we don't know of any attacks against them, but they are weaker. I should put it quote unquote. They're weaker in the sense that this is a relatively new assumption. So. Moreover, the particular assumption that is used in these bilinear maps, it's a stronger thing. It's not just that discrete log is hard in the elliptic curves. It is that it's hard even though there is some special operations called bilinear maps, which can compute some quite a little bit magic properties, okay? And it is a stronger assumption to assume that discrete log remains hard even though you have special purpose elliptic curves which support these magic bilinear maps. And moreover, so this is a stronger assumption once you introduce the bilinear maps, which are required in the previous solution. Moreover, this is actually the computation of the bilinear maps. This is a costly operation. So while regular elliptic curve operations are comparable, the bilinear map, which is required in the solution, is like 10 times more expensive. At least currently, you know, using current implementation. So that's why. They are not like, you know, groundbreaking things, but yet, you know, if you have a choice, you know, you go for the one that is 5 times faster.